Hi, and welcome back to Beyond the Monsters. Today I have Holly Buss with me. This is the first time she is telling her story, and we're here to listen. Let's dive right into it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course.
Yeah, I'll just start when the story starts.
Okay.
I was a 16-year-old homeschool girl, pretty sheltered and already isolated from normal society, you could say. Sometimes that benefits people, sometimes it does not.
Right.
In my situation, it did leave me very vulnerable, naive, impressionable. In spite of that, I was 16, kind of punky. I was super into the emo scene, music crowd. I was kind of normal that way, and that I was just enjoying my teenage years. I didn't know what I wanted to do after I graduated high school. I was probably going to go to college. I didn't know what for. I was just more worried about listening to my music with my friends.
Right.
Well, I was in a homeschool tutorial, and we met twice a week.
Okay. So you went to a school.
Yes, it's not officially, they call it a tutorial or a co-op.
Okay.
You go take classes twice a week. You take your homework home. You do it all throughout the work week, but you are accountable to teachers that are employed at the tutorial.
Okay.
On paper, like when my mother reported to the state, we were considered homeschool students.
Okay.
So we were under an umbrella homeschool group. But anyways, it was a Christian-based tutorial, and at that, there was a class there. It was a Christian worldview and apologetics class that I took on Fridays. And there was a substitute teacher there. The first time I met him, I was 16, like I said.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know this at the time, but that's truly when my life began to end. And he was paying very careful attention to me. He was teaching the entire class a very conservative, patriarchal worldview. But in particular, he focused it more on me.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 17, so the next school year, I was in that class again.
Okay.
It's not because I was held back. It was just a higher grade.
Right.
You could take that class, at different grade levels. But at 17 is when he got to know my family. He got close with my mom and my friends and their parents.
So take us back to 16. Like, what during that year, what was going on that seemed a little different about this guy towards you?
Well, at the time, I didn't know. Looking back, I can see that maybe it's just because he had the opportunity. He was not an official teacher. I think this was the first time he had the opportunity to teach a class, and there were young females in the class. And his worldview is patriarchal, specifically Reformed Christian patriarchal. And that worldview relies on the subjugation of the female species. Men are to dominate the world for Christ.
Right.
And therefore bringing his return. Like once they've conquered the world for Christ, they believe Jesus will come back.
Okay.
And part of that is subduing women as their subservience. They don't use that language necessarily, although they do use submission. But a woman's highest calling is how they present it. That's much more appealing than subservient.
Right.
Your highest calling is to submit to the male authority figures in your life, whether it's your father, who then approves of your husband, and then it's the church elders.
Okay.
And the more children you bring into the world for your husband, the more productive you are as a wife, and therefore you have greater holiness.
Okay.
So, and if a woman steps out of that, if she challenges the male authority figure, if she says, I'm not happy, I've had too much, I'm overworked, what about my interests? That's literally a threat to their male authority structure.
Okay.
So it's the biggest threat to their worldview.
So if a woman was trying to be themselves in
Yes.
any way, that, wow, you were like rebelling.
Yes, Jezebel, feminist,
Yes.
rebellious, worldly, selfish. Because why wouldn't you want to bring more children into the world?
Okay.
It must be because you have selfish motives. So they heap a lot of religious guilt and shame on any sign of nonconformity with their male patriarchal worldview.
Okay.
So
Got it.
I didn't know at the time.
Sure,
That's
you're so
what
young.
I was mentally and religiously being taught. And again, they use much more like appealing language. You know, well, men are to love their wife as Christ loves the church, and they make it very grand sounding. So that, in fact, those teachings caused me, I had a boyfriend at the time, like a high school sweetheart.
Okay.
But because of the class, because of his teachings, I ended up breaking up with him because I was like, I can't be in a casual dating relationship anymore. I need to save myself for marriage. You know,
Okay.
It's my highest calling, and I want to stay pure for my husband because also your value is determined by your purity, sexual purity.
Okay.
So they say.
Right.
So I began kind of I don't want to say that I adopted them as my own because you can't do that when you're being coerced into it.
Right.
The threat of hell is a very convincing coercion tactic.
Right.
It's pretty
So
intimidating.
this is where we would call it grooming, right?
Yes.
They started grooming you.
Yes, religious grooming first.
Right.
And it morphed into more.
Okay.
So when I was 17, it became more of the more religious grooming, but he began to push into my social circles. So it just went from I saw him at class, I talked to him as Mr. such and such, and that was that. Like that was the entire relationship. Very normal, just didn't think about him, you know.
Right.
He was 22 years older than me.
Oh. Okay.
I never thought of him in any other way than just Mr. So-and-so who teaches that class.
Right.
Or substitute taught the class. So, but he pushed himself into my social circles. He got to know my friends. He got to know my mom and her friends.
How did he do this?
He's very charming.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. He's funny. He does have a very quick sense of humor. He's charming. And he will study you to learn what your preferences are. He studies you and he gets to know how to manipulate you.
Right.
So he didn't just do that to me. He did it to my social circles.
Wow.
As well. And then he first approached my mom with this idea of potentially starting a courtship with me. And, you know, that's the phrase that they use. They always have to baptize their language, you know.
For sure.
So courtship, and he made all these grand promises of providing stability and, you know, financial security, love, as Christ loves the church, you know. And he was promising all those things. And every single time anyone came up with the concern about the age gap, he would say, well, you know, age is just a number, and society values things that the Bible doesn't value. Mary was probably 13 or 14 when she was pregnant with Jesus. If you look through history, church fathers of our faith married wives that are 20 years younger, 15 years younger. Martin Luther did. So many fathers of our faith.
He had all the right answers
to the Bible, to
everything.
history, every single time. And he would exhaust you with those explanations.
So he's going to your mom and talking about this. You know nothing at this point, like that's being talked about.
Right.
How do you find out? Like
So I
that they're
know
having these conversations.
He's having these conversations with me without actually mentioning me. Like he's religiously grooming me and all of that.
Right.
So that by the time he approached my mom, I was already pretty damn brainwashed.
Right.
And so then when my mom said, hey, you know, Mr. So-and-so brought this up and I was going to talk to you about it, we were both pretty brainwashed. I personally don't fault my mom. I think that there was similar naivete that I had, that I carried.
And that's probably all she knew if you guys were so
Yes.
involved with the
Yes.
church.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
A lot of religious background
Right.
that laid the groundwork for him.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, at first I was just like, what?
Right.
What? But then again, he would go back to the Bible, and he was so good at, when you brought up a concern, he would validate it. Oh, I know. This is so strange. In today's world, it's weird. And when people have that gut reaction, I get it. It's so bizarre. So he would validate your concerns.
So smooth.
And then explain them away. And then he'd crack a joke or two along the way. And he'd be like, take your time to just think it through. You know, he's
making you think, oh, it's your idea too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Giving that
So,
pause and wow.
That's how it came about. So we officially declared our courtship when I was 17 and he was 39.
And mom and dad at this point have to give their blessing? Or
my mom did. My dad was not in the picture. I didn't have a relationship with him.
Okay.
My parents were divorced. That also laid a lot of groundwork too, as far as leaving me feeling vulnerable.
Right.
Absolutely. That's just what happens in those situations. That also left my mom pretty vulnerable.
I'm sure. And then you were probably even looking maybe at him, and I could be wrong, as like a father figure.
I think subconsciously I was. I wasn't like I wasn't consciously doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But trauma has a way of coming out in your subconscious mind where you have these needs that you don't know you have.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Though I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah.
You know? And before
you're 17 right now.
Yes, and before him, my boyfriend I had before that was my age. Like, I never had a thing for older people.
Right.
Like, it never even occurred to me.
Yeah.
You know, I had a fun, like, he was a great boyfriend, super sweet, respectful.
Right.
We had a fun relationship. And yeah, we were the same age. There was I didn't ever. And like I said, when
you were being a normal teenager then.
Yeah. And when I met Mr. So-and-so for the first time, it never occurred to me. Like, it was just not even on the radar at all. So anyways, we began courting when I was 17, September. I turned 18 in December.
What does that courting look like at 17?
It means
like, what kind of things did you guys do together? Was it like, even when
we would read the Bible together, we would pray together, we would do all the religious things together. We were visiting churches together. We just all of that. Okay. You know. So not really normal teenage couple. There's nothing normal about it. Yes. Nothing. Okay. Do you remember ever thinking like, what is going on here? Or you were already so in your head? During the courtship, and then so we started courting in September. I turned 18 in December. January was when he proposed. So this is moving fast. That's the other thing. Yes. Is there's a lot of pressure to move it fast from him. He was like, we got to get this done. If we know we belong together, if we know this is the Lord's will, why wait? Okay. So there's a lot of pressure to make it happen fast. Mm-hmm. There were moments along the way when I truly questioned myself if I was doing the right thing, to the point where I would break down in a panic. There was one time I talked to him when we were engaged, and I said, I don't know. I feel like when I say things, you don't listen, and I feel like you dismiss a lot of my concerns. And he has a way of explaining you right out of your own feelings and thoughts. Right. And so there was that moment when I really, really questioned myself, but I was so invested at this point that I just kept going, hoping it would, believing it would get better. Right. Because this is a strong Christian man. Like, yeah. And this is what you were taught. Yes. So, sorry, I know I keep like doing my little interruptions. No, you're fine. I'm just trying to like get the full picture, and so everybody else can know exactly what the heck was going on during this time. Grooming it's so hard. Unless you've gone through it, it's hard to understand. Right. It's hard to understand how someone can strip you of your agency so thoroughly.
Absolutely. Like outsiders looking in would be like, well, why didn't she know better? Why didn't her mom know better?
Exactly.
That's not the reality you were in
Right.
at that point. There was no knowing better.
Right. And there was never just one moment when I was groomed. Grooming is the death of 1,000 cuts.
Yes.
There are little things that stack up and paint a picture before you know what's happening.
Right.
And one day you look around and your head's almost under the water, you know? So
Right.
that's what grooming is. And it is hard for people to understand because it's like, well, didn't you see the red flags? Yes,
Right.
I did. And I brought them up and I was concerned. And he had 1,000 explanations for every damn red flag he had.
He knew exactly what to say and what to do.
Exactly.
Always.
Yes. So, then after I turned 18, well, actually, it was 2 weeks after I graduated high school, we got married.
Okay.
And my signature on that marriage certificate was the bolt on my door. It sealed the deal. Now, by state definition, I was 18 and I was an adult.
Right.
But I wasn't. Because that's what grooming does to you. It stunts you.
Emotionally, definitely
It keeps you
not.
vulnerable. It keeps you vulnerable. So even though I was growing in years, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, no. I was just as vulnerable as I was at 16.
Right.
So
You were right where he wanted you to be.
Exactly. And that's the other thing when you think of like, oh, well, she was 18, she consented to it. The necessary component for consent is that you have all the facts in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Over the span of our 10-year marriage, I learned so much that he never told me. He intentionally withheld a lot of information about his life that had I known, I know I would not have chosen that.
Of course he did.
But when you
That's what they
withhold
do.
information, you're removing someone's right to consent.
Right.
So, no, I did not consent.
Right.
I did not have all the facts.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, once you sign that marriage certificate, it's over.
It's done.
It's over. Not only do you have the, I call it legal shackles, but then for me, I had also, which were much stronger, the religious shackles of God hates divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And there's never a reason for divorce. He taught something called the permanency view of marriage, which says even if your spouse is abusing you, you are allowed to separate if you're being physically harmed, but you can't divorce. Marriage is forever. And you should just hope and pray and have faith that God will work things out and always give the opportunity for change to happen. That's why you don't get divorced. So yeah, it really, that religious grooming was more powerful, more secure. It was more of a dungeon than even a legal document binding me to him.
Way more scary.
Yes. So
Yes.
we got married. On our honeymoon, I knew right away that the person who convinced me to marry him was not the person I married. It was like his work was done. He was a totally different person on our honeymoon, and I fell into severe depression. I knew I had made a horrible mistake, but in
What
my
kind of
mind,
behaviors did you see, like the switch, that change in him, if you can recall some of them?
Oh yeah, he went from lavishing me with attention to not even wanting to acknowledge me as a person.
That fast.
That fast. He is a workaholic. He loves games. He just shut down. And all of a sudden, I knew I had no emotional or mental access to him. He was cold. He wasn't mean. Mean as in, like, he didn't yell. He didn't physically threaten me or harm me that way. But the shutdown, the coldness,
Which is complete mental abuse.
mental,
Like, yes,
spiritual, and
yes,
emotional.
yes.
I mean, it's, it's a wound that you can't see, but it goes far deeper than a physical wound ever could.
I believe that too.
And you can't really verbalize it too well because it's hard to verbalize it.
Right.
And it also creates a situation where you think, what did I do wrong?
Right.
So you're struggling with trying to figure out what you did wrong to cause
Well,
this.
you've been brainwashed this whole time. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is how I'm supposed to live. And you think you're just doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. So
You must have felt so just so alone.
It was incredibly lonely because by marrying him, I sacrificed friendships and family because a lot of people did have a lot of concerns. A lot of people tried to talk to me, but by the time we went public with our courtship, the brainwashing was done.
Okay.
And he also, part of the brainwashing is causing me to doubt my friends and family because they don't have true Christian faith like we have.
Yeah.
They're being influenced by the world. So he spreaded those seeds of doubt, nourished that soil, and by the time anyone could set the alarm, I was gone.
Well, that's, the way it goes a lot of times in any abusive relationships. They do keep you from your friends, keep you from your families. They're the ones with the problem. It's not, it's just a vicious cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh,
so
you were just so
I
young.
lost a lot, and then we got married, and it was incredibly lonely. We had one car. I never left the house. When he went to work, I didn't go anywhere. I was just at home alone.
Were you not allowed to work? Was that a thing?
Oh, no, that was not an option.
Okay.
I was not to work outside the home. I was to be a homemaker and raise kids, which I did. In fact, I have 5 of them.
Okay.
So
when did that start where you're like, okay, now I have to have kids with this guy?
Right away. Our first was born 9 months and 3 weeks after our marriage.
Okay.
So right away. Now I want to say this, after marriage and after the honeymoon, I fell into such severe depression that for me, and this is pretty vulnerable to say, I thought that death was my only escape. And I used to fantasize about it. But the problem with that was if I actually committed the act, then I would go to hell.
Right.
Which is apparently a scarier place than the one I was already in, or so I was taught.
Right.
So talk about a prison. There's truly no escape.
In every way.
And it's it's a mental and religious and spiritual prison.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I got pregnant right away, and that baby pretty much saved my life because I knew nothing was going to harm that baby. I would not let myself harm that baby, ever. And so I just proceeded to have a child about every 2 years. That's just how it happened because you weren't to practice any sort of conception control or anything like that. You were to always bring children into your life. And if you didn't have the financial resources to support them, then you should just trust and have faith in God that He will provide. If you're tired, have faith, He will provide. If you're overwhelmed, maybe you're being selfish, or maybe you lack faith that God's going to get you through this. But children are a blessing from the Lord. Therefore, you should have as many as you possibly can.
And even the act of conceiving for you is probably disgusting. At this point.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
Awful. So I lived like that for 10 years.
Did you like I'm trying to just picture all this. It's just horrific. Did you just put it in your head to concentrate on your kids?
Yes.
Is that what kept you going?
Yes.
100%. Yeah.
100%. And they were worth every bit of effort, and they still are.
Right.
Because none of this is their fault. It's not like they asked to be born in this situation. They didn't. That none of the, their life circumstances are what they are.
Wasn't your fault either.
They didn't choose it. And I was a kid when it started too. I really was a child having children.
Yes.
But part of this whole grooming is you are to present yourself as a happy, lovely, hardworking, faithful wife who trusts in her husband's leadership and authority, so you better smile. So nobody knew how tired I was. In fact, I was afraid to admit to myself how tired and overwhelmed and unhappy and miserable I was, I would deny it because I thought it was just selfishness rising up in me or laziness or something like that. So it was not only a battle that the entire worldview was heaping on my shoulders, but it was also a battle within myself.
Right.
And so it was a vicious cycle of always picking myself up, showing up, doing the work, smiling, and then eventually crashing hard. And it just kept repeating itself. And I'd have these moments when the pain would be so unbearable that I couldn't deny it anymore. And I would break apart and I would try to talk to him about it. I remember after baby number 4, I spent about 3 weeks trying to convince him we should not have any more kids, at least for a while. And it was fruitless.
What would he say? Like, what was his response to that?
At that point, non-response. He would just glaze over. His eyes would just glaze over.
So, like, truly deaf ears. You're just
truly
begging and pleading.
Yeah, truly deaf. The coldness and vacancy that would fill his eyes whenever I did something that made him unhappy was overwhelming and terrifying. It's very terrifying to face something so cold and vacant. Like, there's just no one there.
Right.
There's a body there, but there's no one there. Whoever lived in this body must have died a long time ago because there's no damn soul in this person.
Right.
And no matter what I do to try to find that soul, it's not there.
Did you have any outside friends throughout this time?
I was
or were you
involved in
allowed?
a religious community. So my friends were part of a church that we attended for 7 years. And they were just as brainwashed as I was. It's a cult-like church in existence. So, the same. I was in the cult of my ex. Like, I was in his little personal cult. I was his faithful subservient who smiled. Mm-hmm. But then I was also a member of a cult.
Right.
And it's the same thing. The same manipulation, gaslighting, the same intimidation, the same religious intimidation and the threats of hell and being labeled rebellious and outcast from your friend group and all those things. And then when you are in conformity, the way they bring you in and just lavish on the approval, it's the same thing, same tactics, same manipulations. And that's why we were there, is because that's a comfortable environment for someone like my ex to be in.
Right.
So
how was he with the children?
During the marriage, he was just emotionally absent from the children. I did everything. I raised the kids. I gave birth to them. I cared for them. I did everything. I homeschooled them as I was supposed to do. He worked.
Okay.
And when he wasn't at his day job, he was working on his websites, and he was trying to build a social media presence to promote his worldview as well. Like, he wrote books and has a blog and all that stuff.
Okay.
And
Scary.
so, yeah. And so that's what he would do. And I remember I could count on one hand how many times he took the boys out to play ball or toss a football.
Oh.
I could count that on one hand,
Were they allowed to play sports or be involved in anything?
No, they went to church and then they stayed home. I would do play dates with other church friends and their kids, but that was pretty much their social life. So.
Wow. You're probably dealing with everything inside your own head, and then now you have your children that you're like,
Yes.
look what they're going through.
Yes.
Wow.
So.
I give you so much credit. Just the fact that you are still here, and because most people that would make you crack, to where,
Yes.
yeah.
And like I said, it was a vicious cycle. I would crack. I would have moments of absolute breakdown. But then the religious grooming would kick in, and I would need to pick myself back up and honor the Lord and smile while I'm doing it.
Right.
And so the cycle kept going. So then in 2021, my ex had a dust up with the elders of the church we were at over a financial agreement that they had verbalized. And I still will never know to this day what actually happened.
Okay.
But a rift happened and we left the church.
In
same
2021.
Yes.
Okay.
The same month we left the church, my mother died of cancer.
Oh, no.
She was my support. Like, she would babysit for me. She was there for the births. She was everything a mom and a grandmother should be.
Right.
Perfect, wonderful, just, you know, so she was my safe place that way. Now, I never told her how miserable the marriage was. I never told her about the problems. Literally never. I never said a word to her. Because, for one, you're not supposed to dishonor your husband.
Right.
And two, I really did not want to disappoint her. Because if I had told her, she would have had to face that she was lied to and fooled just as much as I was.
Wow.
And so I never said a word to her. And she died. And she doesn't know now that I'm, you know, single.
Right.
Like,
right.
nothing. And so she passed away. We left the church all in October of 2021. We moved. We were actually living on the church property, which is pretty crazy. We were right next door to the elders. Our home's connected with a sidewalk.
Okay.
We moved out. And so we moved in February of 2022. I got my hand on a book called The Body Keeps a Score. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
I thought so. And that's really what broke me from the religious grooming. That's what made me feel like, okay, these cracks I'm having, this vicious cycle is real.
Right.
The trauma is real, and that's what really just changed the game for me. So
That's incredible.
I read that in February of 2022. I did try to have conversations with him about, like, hopefully somehow trying to fix our relationship, though you can't fix something that was never good to begin with. But the reality of divorce is hard to face, and you would rather do anything than that, than raise 5 kids.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't have work experience. Like, the all the things and all the changes that would have to happen, it's kind of like last resort.
And so much unknown, and you've lost your support person.
Yes. So those conversations, though, confirmed to me that everything I had felt and thought was even more real than I realized, because those conversations went so bad. So,
like, give us an example, if you don't mind. Just like when you're talking to him and trying to plead with him, and, you know, you're asking him for change. Was it just that
really
stare that he would give you? Yeah.
A lot of blank staring.
Right.
Just a lot
Which
of
is scary if anybody does that, let alone.
Non-response.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain, but, like, when someone just checks out and they're just.
Yeah.
And it's such a vacant coldness. They're dead eyes. There's just nothing there.
Right.
Because you're showing vulnerability and pain, and they don't know how to handle that.
Right.
So they check out. They can't face their own vulnerability and pain, so they sure as hell can't face yours.
Right.
And so then the thing that really changed was I started highlighting his actions. Hey, you're doing X, Y, Z, but you say this and it's not matching up.
Oh. That's
when the problem started. That's when he went from just kind of like, you know, he would never, like, call me a bitch or anything like that. Like, he never screamed. He did not have any alcohol issues. You know, when you think of abuser, you kind of have this image in your head of, like, a man who's out of control and swinging fists.
Yes.
Not him. And I've never claimed otherwise. But that's when he really started calling me crazy. That was the first time he started calling me crazy.
Like, how dare you question him or tell him anything?
Or it wasn't even that. He would just be like, that's crazy.
All calm like that?
Very calm.
Ugh.
His voice was so controlled and cold.
It's almost like it would have made more sense if he was, like, irrational or, like, yelling a little.
Yes, but no, the calmness.
That's just creepy.
Very calm and cold. And the disbelief of, what are you talking about? Holly, that's crazy. Where did you get those ideas?
Major gaslighting.
Yeah, like, he would never yell. It was always that way. And so it's unnerving. It's hard to explain how unnerving it is.
Right.
But anyways, I started secretly planning a way out. I remember the first time I called an attorney. I was in my closet, literally having a breakdown. I was trying, because I'd never done anything like this before.
Yeah.
The overwhelm, the shaking, my body's reacting uncontrollably. But I actually called an attorney, and I hired her, and I filed for divorce in October of 2022.
Okay.
And nothing.
So how did you hire her though? Like, how did you get access to like money or?
I did have help.
Okay.
I had help.
Thankfully.
I contacted a few different abuse organizations and hotlines. I had a good friend that I could confide in. I had 2 good friends that I confided in. And between the ministries and my friends, we were able to make this happen where I could retain an attorney. So because he was never overtly physically or verbally abusive to the children, he was fine. He was, pretty emotionally absent, but once in a while we had a family game night. He did love watching movies. He's a big movie gamer guy. So as long as the kids could do that with him, So I filed for 50-50 custody, thinking, you know what, maybe he'll step up and actually connect with the kids, because he's being forced to now that he's going to be parenting them 50-50.
Right.
And that gives me time to go to school, because I've got to get in the workplace. And I have no idea what even I'm going to do. I did secure a job at a daycare where I was going to be a first grade teacher. Okay. So the kids were going to attend there, and I was going to work there, offering me discounts. It was like this amazing situation I was able to find. Filed for 50-50 custody. And nothing in heaven above or hell below could have prepared me for how he responded. The first thing he did, because me and the kids left the house, and then he was served the divorce papers, just because I didn't know how that was going to go. Right. The first thing he did was drain the bank account. He didn't even call me. He drained the bank account.
Of course he did. Control.
Yes, and money is his God. He doesn't say that, but money is his God.
Right.
And then we came back home the next day. And it became, the narrative shifted. Children, your mother is dangerous.
Oh, no.
She's lost her mind. You're going to live with me now. And your lives are going to be better once she's gone. And he stopped calling me mom, and he started calling me by my first name to the kids. And he started buying them every fucking thing they wanted. He would buy my daughter sushi every night, chocolate, snacking.
Oh, God, this guy.
Games, movies, a second Nintendo Switch. Just lavishing on the attention he had deprived them of their entire lives.
Right.
So for children, it's like, oh my gosh, I have a dad.
Yeah, look how cool he is. And he gets us all these things. And the kids are young.
Very
They're young.
Very. My oldest is 11.
Oh.
So at this time, she was 9
Yeah.
years old. And I was breastfeeding full time. And that's what happened. And not like nothing. And it became, he would make intentional, because we were still living in the same household. I didn't have the resources I needed to move out before filing.
Right.
I couldn't move out. I was going to have like 2 to 4 months where I would start work, the children would start school, and I could find a place to go. Like, I needed a transitional period. And he used that time to make life hell. He would make mass messes around the house, and then just be like, so when are you going to clean that up?
In front of the kids, too.
Right? Everything was in front of the kids. Everything. You're lazy. It was awful. We had holidays because I filed in October. Thanksgiving Day, I made a turkey at home. We were supposed to go to family, but we got the flu, so we had to stay and just have it there. So I was cooking the turkey, and he was like, he made some sides, and he was like, children, I made these sides. We're going to, and we had 2 tables, and I was just setting the table where we always had dinner. No, and he took everything and put it on the formal dining room table. And then it was like, kids, I'm taking over your education. I'm going to homeschool you now, and we're starting math today. Thanksgiving Day. And I'm like, what? Like everything he could to stress us out.
It sounds like he was starting to lose it, like lose control of even himself at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it kept going that way to where I was just trying to get out of the house. It was, the intentional sleep deprivation. He would keep the kids up late. Bedtime routines were gone. And every time I told the children something, he was behind them saying, no, don't do that. So he was training them to disregard me as a parent.
Yes.
Training them to view me with the disgust that he has. And my children became people I didn't even know anymore. And that right there is by far the hardest thing. It was like I was watching them die too. The back talking, they started treating me as he treated me. And in turn, he would just lavish on the approval and oh yes, he took all of our wedding photos off the wall. Every photo of mom in the house he took down and replaced with photos of him and the kids. And he decked out their bedrooms. He bought them posters, blankets, new bedding, everything, the superhero bedding, and meanwhile, I can't buy face cream because I have no access to our money.
Right.
And I would ask him to get some of this stuff at the stores. No, you have to get that. I'll buy groceries, but if you need anything, you just have to get it. We had a single vehicle that he kept the keys in his pocket. I couldn't use it without his, it was a living hell. That proceeded, I lived like that from October to December 9th.
It's just mind-blowing too. It's just how impressionable kids are too, and it's not their fault, but how quickly he was able to do this.
Mm-hmm. It's not their fault.
No, it's just so
fault.
Scary.
So after Thanksgiving, things took a turn for the worse. The police were in our home with like 5 times within 2 weeks. And every time they would come, I would explain, this is what's happening. Is he hitting me? No, I have no damn bruises to show, but let me tell you what is going on.
Right.
Well, ma'am, the courts haven't decided you both have full legal custody. Like, there's nothing we can do. And there's not. It's not their fault.
Right.
Legally, there's nothing they can
Right.
do. It kept getting worse and worse and worse to where I was not sleeping at all. He was keeping the kids up till 3 a.m. Sometimes a ministry sent out a lady to stay with me, and she witnessed the psychotic behaviors. And she was like...
So he didn't care that she was there.
Oh, he did. She, when she came over, she was like, hi. And I said, hi, my friend's coming over just to stay with me. Because at this point, I'm scared of 2 things. And I talked about this with the domestic abuse ministries that I had contact with. He's never physically harmed me, but his behaviors are getting so erratic that when he crosses the line, I'm afraid he's going to go all the way. Because he's smart enough to know that when he crosses the line, law can do something. Mm-hmm. So if he's going to do it, he's going to go big. That's why he hasn't harmed me, because he studies the law to get around it, mm-hmm. to cause harms in ways that won't get him in trouble.
Right.
That's why he never hit me. So, plus you put that on top of the sleep deprivation. I'm breastfeeding a baby. We have 5 kids. He'll come and cause all the chaos and then go work in his office, and I'm left with the pieces
right.
of it and the messes he used to leave around the house.
Right.
I had no secure sleeping arrangements. I was sleeping on the couch with the baby. And things got very concerning between him and my oldest. And so the night he insisted she sleep with him in his room was the first time I called the cops. And I said, just let the child sleep in her bed and let her go to bed at her bedtime. Stop keeping her up till 12, 1, 2 o'clock. Stop. And he just would not. And the entire time, through every single interaction, he maintained the calm, cold voice. Mm-hmm. Never raised his voice. So, on December 9th, I had not only the woman who came to stay with me to offer support, but 2 other men came because it was getting so volatile and concerning. And so they came, and of course he had a cow, but legally I said, I'm inviting friends over. And that's when his behavior became the most erratic.
I can't believe he still showed his ass.
Oh, absolutely.
With people there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, he did.
And that makes it more scary because now he could just snap.
Right. Although There was times like he, my friend, the gentleman who came, had a backpack with a little laptop in it, and he set it on the chair, and my ex threw it on the floor. He was walking by my friend Heidi. He was walking by Heidi in the kitchen, and he,
Like checked her?
Yeah, just like shoved her as walking by, but not like making it look like it was an accident.
Right.
Like, nobody accidentally does it like that. So that night just got worse and worse and worse, to the point where about 3:30 a.m. I call the cops. At this point, I'm recording and videoing everything I can. I see on his computer screen text history between me and him open in Photoshop, which I documented. The kids are still up. It's 3 a.m. He's blasting music. He took all their mattresses from their beds and brought them into his room, telling them that there's strangers in the house and they're dangerous people, that my kids have met these people before. And
the kids are probably believing him. I mean,
yes. Meanwhile, he's got a toy stash in his closet that it's like Christmas. It's like Christmas. And that's how he keeps the kids in his room.
Sure.
Let's watch TV. Here are new toys. Here's candy. Here's your new Switch.
Just a big free for all.
Let's build forts, And so it was, that night was awful. It was awful.
So what did the police say?
Well, when the cops got there that time, at this point, it was probably the 6th time police were at my home. And that night they said, ma'am, it's got to stop. I want you to go to the magistrate's office tonight and file for an order of protection. Just do it. So me and Heidi left. We went to Williamson County Magistrate's office. I filed for an ex parte, and it was granted. We go back to the house. The sheriff, the
immediate,
police,
like an immediate emergency. Okay.
Yes. The police walk in. They have him sit at the kitchen table, and they told him, "Do not say a word. You may not speak." And I was instructed to go get all the children, load them up in the van, and leave. Part of this was I explained to the police, like, I have nowhere to go but this ministry that is with me, and they were with me that night. They have a safe house in Alabama. I'm not to take the kids out of a 50-mile radius, right? Because I had filed for divorce. But I explained to the officers, I said, these kids, we have nowhere else to go. There is a safe house in Alabama. Do I have your permission to go to Alabama? It's outside of the 50-mile radius, but I want your permission before I go. And they granted it. I have it in writing. And I said, thank you so much, sir. The car seats are in the van. He has those van keys in his pocket. I can't get the keys. Can you get them? So yes, when they detained him at the table, he made him give up the keys. And I got those kids out. I grabbed whatever shoes and clothes I could find.
Yeah.
And we left to Alabama, which I'd never lived there before. I don't know, outside of 2 people.
Right.
I know no one.
Right.
So we crash landed at a safe house in Alabama with nothing to our names other than the van and some shoes and clothes.
What did you feel like, though, that night
the
when
relief,
you got there?
The drive down, it's a 2-hour drive. The relief was overwhelming. I mean, I just sat there and bawled my eyes out because I had finally got out of that hellhole, that chaotic environment where you can't even take your shoes off because you're afraid something's going to happen.
Right.
You can't sleep. You can't function. And you're also caring for 5 children.
Right.
And so the relief was immense. Like, I couldn't really think of anything else. I couldn't.
You could breathe.
My body was overwhelmed with relief. My brain was like,
Right, right.
So yeah, we that's when me and the kids moved to Alabama. Then so he actually
Did you what I didn't think of? Did you even have a phone, a cell phone or anything?
I did have a phone.
Okay.
It was on his phone plan. There was always the concern that he could read my text messages, but I called Verizon and I think he could see the numbers on my phone, but he couldn't see content.
Okay. I'm surprised he didn't shut it off.
Yes, me too. He did, drain the bank account. He rerouted his direct deposits to go to a new account I had no access to. So the ministry very graciously supported me through that time. So I filed for divorce in October. He had 30 days to file an answer. So he did. He filed an answer and a counter complaint. And in his counter complaint, he was asking that he be the primary parent, raise them full-time. He wanted to homeschool them while he maintained his full-time job. And I, because I'm so crazy and a threat to their safety, should only have very limited supervised parenting time. I'm the one who raised those kids.
Right.
So he began a legal attack that took me 2 years to get through. Numerous court dates, expert witnesses, the cost. I had no money. The cost of that alone almost drowned me. Had it not been for amazing people in my life, I would not be here. I would have lost those kids, because when he claims those things, I didn't have the financial resources for representation. I couldn't hire the expert witnesses, the psychologist, and the therapist. It was just me.
Right.
Had other people not come alongside me, I'd have lost that war. And I'd have probably lost my kids.
Right.
And that was a loss. I had already lost a friend community. I lost my mom. I lost a household of 10 years, all my belongings. I'd already lost pretty much damn everything you could lose.
Right.
But had I lost my kids, I know right now I would not be here today. That's just a loss I wasn't going to take.
Right.
So, anyways, I ended up hiring an attorney who invested his damn heart and soul in my case. I don't know why, but he went to bat for me. We got a psychologist involved. We had therapists involved. We had numerous court dates, which culminated into a 3-day-long trial that took place in March of last year.
Because he was just fighting it the whole time.
Absolutely. He was sending DCS to my house. He was claiming I was abusing the kids. He even claimed that my friends were abusing the kids. He
Grasping for anything
and everything. And I mean, he was coming up with pretty damn detailed accounts of I was apparently binding my children by the wrists and they were bleeding, and I was exchanging them to my friends for money favors. And like, he was coming up with insane shit. And
was the court at this point seeing through it?
Well, to a certain degree, because my kids were never taken from me.
Right.
If anyone ever believed I was actually doing those things,
yes,
they remained in my care the entire time. Through the entire legal process, they remained in my care. When we moved to Alabama, the court gave me permission to enroll them in schools. So they started public school for the first time. And all this upheaval, now my homeschool kids are in public school, which is a huge change in Alabama where they know nobody.
Right.
I'm so thankful for their teachers and their small town school that really loved on them. They adjusted well. From January to April of 2023, he was having every other weekend visits with them. Mm-hmm. And that was going so poorly that the judge ended up ceasing those by the end of April. And then were
the kids like misbehaving with
yes.
you at all? Because they'd go with him and it was that. Okay.
It was unbearable. In fact, at trial, when I played the audio and video recordings of my children, the court said they were horrific, and that the mental abuse in those audio and videos were horrific displays of mental abuse towards the children is what the court said. So, but all of this takes time.
Sure.
We had so many hearings because I had filed another emergency motion to cease those visitations. That was heard twice before the judge did. She did cease the visitations, and it became FaceTime calls, recorded FaceTime calls. And so then we got a psychologist involved. We were working with a therapist. All of this led up to trial in March of last year. And thankfully, everything, all of my video and audio, all of the, everything my attorney was able to put on the table at trial won the case. We proved the mental and emotional and religious abuse. We proved it. The psychologist and the therapists absolutely confirmed, yes, she was groomed at 16. This is what happened. We had the expert testimonies. After they reviewed everything, we had that. And so throughout this time, I do want to say, when we moved to Alabama, the kids started public school. I got a job at a coffee shop. Okay. It was my first job. It was fun. It was just a place for me to clock in, goof off with my teenage coworkers.
Yeah. Having normal conversations.
Yes. And interact with the outside world.
Right.
And my managers ended up being so gracious because of all the court days I had to take off, sick days for kids, because I was their only care provider. You know, I missed so much work. But they said basically, you know, hey, whatever you needed. And my coworkers, if they could, they would pick up my shifts for me. So, you know, I'm managing this legal struggle, this legal fight with the income of a barista in Decatur, Alabama.
Right. Right.
Which isn't much. And even then I could only work 8 to 2 because I had to be home after school, let out. So that's how I was living through the entire court proceedings. So,
and these court proceedings are still for divorce and just
and
regarding the children
and figuring out a parenting plan. But anyways,
but you're thinking, how does he even get any kind of plan with his behavior, you know?
Well, you know, the courts, it's very understandable that they want to maximize both parents' parenting time.
Right.
Because 2 parents are better than 1. That's the assumption. And there is truth to that. But an abusive parent is no good at all.
No.
And 1 healthy parent is better than 2 parents where 1 is actively undermining not only the other parent, but society as a whole, because he was still religiously brainwashing the children. He told them that their public school teachers hated God and didn't know the Bible. So he's still trying to isolate the children from normal society.
And that's their dad telling them, so why wouldn't they believe him?
He bought them all Bibles. Like God. So not only was the alienation from me still happening, but it was not only is your mom dangerous, but all of her friends, please be careful around them. And in fact, the state of Alabama is not that great. And your public school teachers don't know God. They don't even know the Bible. And then he would tell them that, you know, he's going to homeschool them and they're going to live with him forever. One time I remember.
Are they excited about that sometimes when he says that, though? Because
it's like Candyland. You know,
free for all there.
The toys, the food, the candy, whatever their hearts desired was there. And I remember hearing about this after one of their overnight visitations where he drove them through a very wealthy neighborhood and showed them big houses with in-ground pools and told them he was going to buy one of these houses and that's where they would live forever. And the kids were so excited.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Yep. So,
you had to be just walking around devastated inside with
there was
free. You felt more free, but that
as
I
long
can't
as
even
I
imagine.
love my children, he knows exactly how to hurt me.
Right.
That's all those children are to him. Pawns.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't know how to relate to another person. Abusers don't relate to people. They control and coerce people.
Right.
That's why there's that vacancy there in their souls. There's nothing to relate to. There is only a hunger for power.
Right. Strong narcissism going on there.
Yes. In a narcissistic religion as well. That particular kind of subculture of Christianity he was into, Reformed Christian Reconstructionism, actually teaches the male dominance, authority structure that is very ego-inflating to the men involved in that religion.
Right.
So, but throughout all this time, I was, of course, trying to process, well, okay, obviously I cannot sustain myself being a little barista. There's no job opportunities in the tiny little town I was living in Moulton. I was just trying to figure out, well, what now? Right. As I was preparing for trial. I realized I really enjoyed the legal side of this process. I loved strategizing with my attorney. I loved the work that went into that. I enjoyed going to court. I felt very empowered whenever I was at court. And so
Probably because you felt like people were listening.
Yes,
When
and
you're
I
in court,
knew,
they were listening to you finally.
and I knew that I knew the facts.
Yeah.
I knew the facts of my story better than anyone else in that courtroom.
Right.
No, I don't have the psychological expertise, but I know the facts in the timeline.
Right.
And I can verbalize it and communicate it. I can explain the patriarchal worldview inside and out, and how it leaves women absolutely defenseless, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, and financially.
Right.
100% defenseless while caring for other vulnerable people. So it just, and the whole entire authority structure, it relies on the women staying down. Once women stand up, there is no patriarchal authority structure.
Right.
There's not. That's why a strong woman is such a threat. So I felt just very confident in it, sitting down with a psychologist
That's
or a
amazing.
therapist and going through the facts and the timeline and the grooming and the religious ideas. So I ended up considering the legal field. And anyways, by the time trial came around, I did get a job offer at a firm. So I do work now
Yay.
at a firm as a legal assistant. I have a lot to learn.
Yes, I love that.
Well,
You're so smart.
I should probably just back up a little bit, because at trial, and I don't know how much of this to share, and I do need to share, because everything I worked so hard for, at the end of the day, no matter how well I could get on the stand and communicate the facts of the story, no matter how well I processed everything and was able to show up and care for my children, if I wasn't able to financially secure legal representation, things would not have ended up how they ended.
Right.
Justice absolutely comes with a price.
It
Justice
does.
is served
It does.
to those with the deepest pockets.
That's
That's
a fact.
just a fact.
Yeah, it is.
And you know what? I think is it 29 in every 1,000 sexual abuse perpetrators actually face jail time? Do you know why that is? Because the victims are the ones burdened with making the justice happen,
Right.
with buying the justice.
Yes.
And victims are not in that position.
Right.
They were just abused, controlled, whatever. They don't have thousands of dollars to buy the justice they need.
Right.
And so a lot of perpetrators walk free.
Way too many.
My case was just very unique in that I found an attorney who put his heart and soul into it. And that absolutely saved my children's futures.
Right.
Not everyone is as blessed or lucky as I am. At the end of the day, my legal costs alone are astronomical. That does not include the costs for expert witnesses,
Right.
the cost of taking time off my little paying job to go to court, the cost of childcare for court dates, court reporters. The pursuit of justice is so fucking expensive.
It is. It is.
And so,
And when it comes to legal or trials, especially trials, I mean, you're charged for every single thing, every action that's done during the trial. This attorney speaking to this person, or their paralegals, or this, or like, I don't think most people wrap their head around how much that can cost.
And I had never talked to an attorney before all this, so
Right.
I didn't know like what I was doing when
Right.
it started. But I was quickly realizing, the billable hours, and I was like, whatever work I can do, let me do it. I'm not going to shoot off 20 emails in a week now. I'm going to condense it into one. You learn how to manage the costs and cut down where you can. Even then, it's immense. But the attorney costs, I don't want to throw any attorneys under the bus, because they sacrificed a lot of their life to gain the expertise they have. law school is extremely expensive.
Right.
The time that law school takes from your life,
Mm-hmm.
like they made the sacrifice to be able to represent you.
Right.
They probably have school loans that are, you know, like
Sure.
there's a lot that goes into being able to represent someone. But you learn how to navigate the cost of it. I don't think judges are at fault. I don't think attorneys are at fault. I don't think any one individual is at fault for how expensive justice is.
Right.
I think they're all trying to navigate a system that was in place before they were even born,
Right.
that benefits the rich and starves the poor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not anyone's fault. You know,
Right.
of course there are crooked attorneys.
I was going to say, there's definitely some shady ones out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there are shady judges, and there
Yep.
are shady, but I would...
In any profession, right?
Yeah,
I guess
but
it's fair to say that.
You know, I know people are like, oh, attorneys, but like I
Yeah.
am blessed to know some amazing attorneys.
Right.
And who are very empathetic, caring people who do put their heart and soul into representing you, and who are very ethical with the way they bill their time.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean there aren't attorneys out there who take advantage,
Right.
you know, of extreme life circumstances.
Yes.
That absolutely happens, but women need to be empowered to know how to navigate this.
Yes.
They need to know how to represent themselves to their attorneys, because when you can walk into your law office with confidence and say,
Mm-hmm.
here's the necessary facts of the story, this is how they're prioritized,
Mm-hmm.
and just condense your information down, that's less time the attorney has to do it.
Right.
So there, you learn how to navigate this way in a way that the better you get at using your own voice,
Mm-hmm.
the more it saves you in there's a financial benefit to regaining your agency and your voice.
Yes.
There is, and I want women to try to like grasp that and really understand it and learn how to use that to their financial advantage. The more you heal and do your trauma work, you might think therapy is just another bill,
Mm-hmm.
but if you can really do your work and grow in your confidence and get your agency back and get your words back,
Mm-hmm.
it is going to save you a lot.
Right.
And in fact, when you walk into the courtroom, you are going to command respect because you're a confident woman who, yes, you were absolutely abused, taken advantage of, but you know what? That's not your fault, because abusers, no one should bear guilt when an abuser crafts their strategy to fit you.
Yes.
When they study you to learn just where your vulnerabilities are, when they, you know, it's not your fault
Right.
that happens. No, you weren't naive. No, you weren't stupid or dumb, and you still aren't stupid or dumb. Someone was watching you and created a
Absolutely.
strategy and knew just where to hit you at the right time.
Right.
And knew just when to build you back up
Yes.
to keep you in
And
a
that doesn't
constant
have
state
to
of
be your
confusion.
story. That doesn't have to be the end for you. You aren't those things.
Exactly.
People need to know you can get past that.
Exactly.
Like, and I think that's what's so hard, I think, for people to realize when they're in those situations that, oh, I do have a voice.
Mm-hmm.
I do have capabilities of certain things, because they're beat down. Like you
Mm-hmm.
were beat down to
Well,
feel like nothing.
For 10 years of my life, it was never safe to use my voice.
Right.
Every time I tried to use it, I got the smackdown,
Right,
the religious
right.
and mental and
Yes.
emotional smackdown.
Yes.
So you learn that your
The fear was
body
there.
learns. Your body learns it's not safe to use your
Yes.
voice. And that's when the anxiety and the freezing and the fawning, you know,
Yes.
starts to take place.
Mm-hmm.
But you just have to understand that's what your body needed to do to survive that situation.
Right.
It was keeping you safe.
You know, we talked just briefly about, you know, how long you had to testify, and you were on the stand for a long time. I hear a lot of people, and I did, you know, forensic psych and addiction for almost 20 years. A lot of victims, survivors, their biggest thing for them, I don't want to testify. I don't want to go up there and be put in front of everyone. Like, I'm sure maybe you felt that at first, because you
I
didn't.
definitely, like, I did have moments of that, but when I wasn't at court, I was really trying to heal.
Okay.
And my confidence on the stand, and I'm not going to say I just walked up there all confident,
Right.
because I didn't.
Right.
Right before getting on the stand, absolutely I had the shivers, you know,
Right,
like
right.
absolutely I was in a nerve.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I knew that what I was going to say was true.
Right.
And that's where your confidence comes in.
I
You
think
know
that's
you're not going to
important
get
for
up
people
there
to
and
know.
BS. You know
Yes.
what you're going to do is get up there and say the truth.
Right.
And the other party is going to get up there and BS their way through
Right.
it.
And you knew that.
I
He
knew
had already
that.
been doing that.
100%. And I also had the documentation. That's the other thing
Yes.
that victims, when you've been abused, it's not like your brain is just like functioning at 100%,
Right.
documenting, remembering,
Yes, yes.
taking clear snapshots. Hell no. A lot of times your cognitive function's slow because you're in such survival mode that your
Yes.
instincts kick in,
Right.
and your actual strategic type thinking kind of slows down. And so it's so hard to overcome that, but you can with intentional healing.
Right.
And I think healing probably is different for everyone, and everyone needs to find out what heals them. For
Right.
me, it was music.
Okay.
I started listening to the music I used to listen to as a teen.
Taking you back. Yeah.
And I forgot a lot of it existed, but Spotify would queue up these songs and I'd
Yeah.
be like, I forgot about that song, but I
Yeah.
still knew every single word.
See.
But beauty, nature, anything that feeds your soul is what's going to give you confidence on the stand.
Right. I think it's important to, that people know. I don't know. Sorry. You got me all emotional, so now I can't talk. I think it's important that people know, unfortunately, in the legal system, it's all what you can prove. And you can have expert witnesses, all the things, but the fact that you did record some things, you made sure you had some ammo there, I think is so important.
It is.
And people are like, well, if he or she, whatever, if they see it, they're going to flip out, whatever. So get that proof, send it to someone you trust, delete it, make sure it's all deleted, whatever you have to do
Yes.
to get ammo to protect you in a court of law, I think is a big deal.
It's huge.
Yes.
And you're not usually, when you're in it, you're not in that
You're
mental
not thinking
state.
about that.
That's why it's so important.
Yes.
And I had those people to come alongside me and say, document, send it to me, and I'll put it on a
Oh,
safe,
good. See?
drive.
Yes.
And so that's what I was doing because I had those people. I
Right.
definitely would not be where I am today without my people. Absolutely. And some of my people are strangers.
Right.
There's just something that when you start living in alignment with what you know to be true, first about yourself, and then about your circumstances and environment, something happens, and I don't have words for it necessarily. But you call it good karma, I don't know, but things just start aligning and falling into place. I met exactly who I needed to meet at the right time. I had strangers who had no idea what I was going through come up and just say the sweetest things. I don't know why they did that.
Right.
For example, there was one time, this is wild. There was one time I had all 5 kids with me, just crash landed in Alabama. I was trying to buy groceries, and I had all 5 kids in the store, traumatized kids,
Sure.
I'm just trying to get through
Right.
and get back in the van. And I'm at the register, and I have about $200 worth of groceries. And my card's declining. And my toddler's, I gotta go pee. And I'm just like,
Right.
what?
Yeah.
I tell the guy at the register, I say, just a minute. I know I can fix this. Do you want to hold my driver's license while I figure out why my bank is declining the card? Because I knew that there was a balance.
Okay.
And so he was like, oh, no, you're good. Just go do your thing with your toddler. Take care of him, and you're good. Just go. And so I was like, are you sure? Here's my, ID. And he's like, no, just go do your thing. So I go off to the bathrooms, and they're doing their thing, and I'm checking the bank account, trying to figure out what's going on. And he comes back, and he goes, here you go, you're good. And he hands me the receipt. And I said, you don't have to do that. I'm pretty sure I know what the problem is. I can pay for these today. Like, I know you don't have to do that. Like, that's what I told him. I said, let me fix it. He goes, no, I was where you were. Here you go. You're good. I've never seen that person since, that's the only
Yeah.
time I'll ever see that person.
Right.
Just things like that started happening all the time. I'd be at the playground with the kids sitting on the bench, probably just processing everything, trying to figure out, I think in this particular instance, my ex had sent DCS to my house and they had showed up on Good Friday and they were like, so we have reports of you abusing these children. I need to examine your son's wrists. Apparently he's got wounds from being tied. I was like, yeah, come meet me and the kids. Sorry, there's laundry on the couch, but please come on in.
Right.
And so I was reflecting on that. She ended up leaving and saying, there's no concern here. And she told me, she said, please be careful. I understand what's going on. And she was just like, please be careful. Like, don't.
Because they have to, if someone files a complaint, they have to come out and check.
Investigate.
Yeah.
But after talking with, and she even interviewed my kids privately. Like, I was like, yeah, whatever you need to do, do. I have nothing to hide.
Yeah.
Okay? And she called a friend of mine to talk about it. And then she was like, yeah, case dismissed. There's no concern. So I was like at the park thinking about all that, just feeling just so frustrated with the situation. The fact that my kids even had to go through that experience is horrible.
Yeah.
They did not have to go through that. That's going to be a memory that they have now. Remember when that lady came to our house?
Yeah.
And she asked us these questions and they're just kind of confused.
Yeah.
That's now an experience they have in their childhood. They don't deserve that.
Right.
A stranger came up to me at the park and he was like, it's an older guy with probably his grandson or something. He was like, just so you know, I was watching you with your kids and you're a great mom. You really care for them and I can tell.
Just what you needed to hear.
That was that. Like, that's all that was said. So things like that keep you alive.
Right.
They keep you alive. So you find your people, you find your friends, and that's what's going to build your confidence and help you get your voice back and get your words back.
Right.
It's so easy to let your insecurities isolate you. You
Absolutely.
know? Like, when you're meeting new people and you're like, oh, hey, I'm a single mom of 5 and I live in a safe house. Like, what the?
Right.
Like, how
else do I introduce myself? Yeah.
How do you enter society when you're a single mom of 5 little kids who lives in a safe house?
Right.
Like,
Right.
What?
Yeah.
And you're being dragged to court over and over again, and there's just sheer chaos. And you work as a barista. And clearly, single mom of 5 working part-time as a barista is not an ideal situation.
Right.
It's like red flag city is how I felt.
Yeah.
Like, what in the world?
But you're surviving.
Yeah, that's just, and it teaches you never to come up to someone with assumptions about their circumstances.
Right.
And so.
It's real easy to judge on the outside.
So easy.
Yeah.
So easy. But,
So what happened with court, like after you testified and everything, if you're allowed to share that?
Yeah, no, that was in March. My attorney nailed it. He absolutely just put all the evidence on the table. After the 3-day trial, by the way, my ex was pro se. His attorney withdrew from the case.
Of course.
He never got a new one for reasons I can assume about, but we'll just leave it there.
Yes.
So he represented himself through a 3-day trial. That went greatly in my favor. He did a lot of my work for me.
Good.
And so
How did he show up for that? Like, as far as personality, and what did he show?
Very interesting. When he had his attorney, he would show up to court with his suit coats and his slacks, and he has really long hair. He would pull it back and tuck it in.
All proper. He was all proper. Yeah.
And that's how he would go to church too.
Yeah.
That's very normal. But he showed up to trial and he had on like casual clothes, like some black jeans and a little like sports coat, like not a sports coat, but like a zip up blazer like thing with pockets on it.
Yeah.
It's very casual and his hair was down. And it was just very different. And he showed up with all the religious ego you could have.
Okay.
That's what did my work for me. I did not have
That's
to
what
explain.
I was curious. How did he show up? And he showed himself.
I did not have to. I did when I took the stand, but I did not have to explain his religion. He did that for me. in his own words.
Right.
And he absolutely justified everything he did. And he absolutely justified his relationship with a 17-year-old. And he absolutely said, I really don't agree that the state has the authority to define what is and isn't an adult.
Oh.
So he showed up.
So
with
glad
his ego.
he showed up
showed
in
up
his
with his
normal
ego.
form. Yeah.
So, yeah, there was no filter. His previous attorney did, they filter you.
Right.
That filter was gone.
Yeah.
And that went greatly in my favor.
Good.
So, well, then after March, we were waiting on the final order.
Okay.
And
so you didn't find out during
No.
court?
No, I was thinking maybe 2 to 3 weeks later. Mm-hmm. But the weeks kept going by. And I was supposed to start work. I was living in Alabama, and my job that I got was in Columbia.
Okay.
And so I was supposed to get this final order, get the resources I needed to make the move up to Columbia so I could start my job April 1st.
Okay.
Well, the weeks kept going by, and I don't have anything. I don't have a parenting plan. I don't have a final order. I have nothing.
Right.
And he files another motion claiming a bunch of garbage about me. We go back to court in April after trial, and it was the same regurgitated stuff, and it was dismissed. I mean, it was just like, okay, but we did ask, is there an update on the order? And she said, I'm going to need at least 60 more days.
Oh.
Because she was behind. The courts are overwhelmed.
Right.
It's not her fault.
Right.
The courts are overwhelmed. There's a lot to deal with. That's the other, plays a role in why a lot of SA abusers don't face justice too, is because of the overwhelm of the courts.
Right.
I mean, it's so many
So
people
much.
need
Yeah.
justice.
Right.
So that's when I realized I'm going to have to make this move without the court's order, without the support. I'm just going to have to figure out how to do this. And I did. I did. I moved May 30th. Me and the kids moved to Columbia. I started work 1 week later. And when I moved, I didn't even have childcare in place. So I moved to Columbia, and I was scrambling to get summer care arranged for all 5 children. I was paying for it out of pocket.
I was going to say that had to be
100%.
expensive.
Yes.
Yeah.
He did not put any towards childcare. I was bearing the cost of that alone.
Was he contributing anything, like court ordered?
At that time, way back in the very start of our, right after I moved to Alabama, the court ordered a specific amount in child support.
Okay.
Considering the circumstance and the amount of children we have, it was very low.
Oh.
Very low. So what trial was doing is we were asking for more child support and
Okay.
spousal support. So I did have some support, but it was not very much.
Not
and
enough.
It absolutely did not cost. It didn't even cover the cost of I have now, when I lived in the safe house, the ministry hosted me graciously, did not charge me rent.
Okay.
So when I moved, I took on a rental payment and the child care expense alone. So between rent and child care, we're now looking at monthly bills in the thousands.
Right.
And my child support at the time was very, very minimal.
Okay.
So, but I managed, got through that time. I have learned that I'm really good at surviving on no money.
Right.
I know how not to spend money and only pay my bills.
Right. Right.
But the time just kept going, and I didn't have a final order till September 23rd.
Wow.
So trial in March, a
Yeah.
final order September 23rd. That season of waiting was also incredibly stressful because my work was preparing for trial. That was it. That was our fight accumulated in those 3 days. We did what we needed to do.
Right.
We fought our best, and now we're just waiting on the results. Mm-hmm. The anticipation of wondering. I felt very confident in how trial went. I felt confident that we got everything on the table we needed to do. The expert witnesses did a fantastic job. But still, I don't have anything in writing. Ultimately, it is the judge's decision, and I don't have her decision.
Right.
You know? So, yeah, we did not
Is he seeing the kids during this time?
Just the once a week
The FaceTime.
calls.
Okay.
So the kids started at schools up in Tennessee. I started work. we're just waiting. But we did. We got the final order on September 23rd. So as of September 23rd, I'm officially divorced.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That's a huge win.
Yes, that's a big one.
Huge win. The order was so well done. My judge was a very just and honorable. I know that she really did pay attention to everything that was presented to her. And I feel very blessed that I was assigned her as a judge. She, you know, I think she had, I think I have friends who are also going through legal struggles. And they are often faced with biases in the courtroom that are completely unjust. The bias being against women. I think our society just has this bias against mothers in general, that perhaps if this is going on, there's a divorce going on, what's going on with the mom?
Right.
You know, or when you're watching your hopes and dreams fall apart, you can get emotional. And sometimes women are overcome with those emotions in the courtroom. And instead of understanding and empathy, that's not how they're handled.
Like she doesn't have control of herself, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yes, and it doesn't go in
Which
the woman's
so sad.
favor. It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible. Let's say you were just raped horribly and you get to testify on it and you're overcome because you're having to relive the experience in front of a room of strangers. You're not comfortable in a courtroom setting because who the hell is other than people who do that for a living. Right. And, you know, if you get up there on the stand and you're
everyone's
really
looking at
you, then it's like, you know, the doubt and the bias is there.
It's such a shame.
It is really a shame.
Because just like you said, people are already so scared.
That's the thing.
And they don't want to do it to begin with.
People's symptoms of abuse are mistaken for deficiencies in their character.
Yes.
Or their mental capacity. And that's a damn shame.
Right.
That's a real
they'll throw
shame.
The unstable word out there a lot, and that's just, it's not fair. It's not fair.
Yes. By people who haven't gone through that. I mean, if you're a male judge and you're watching a 17-year-old testify about her rape and she's not doing so great. Right. And you're questioning her stability. Yeah. Like, well, were you a 17-year-old vulnerable person who got raped? Right. Do you even know how to even begin to process what she just went through? Yes. And
there's unfortunately, there is such the lack of empathy.
Yes, that's why empathy is everything. Yes. It's everything. And it needs to absolutely transform the courtroom. Right. It does. And I think, I don't know how to make that happen. So much of these problems, I don't think anyone has one answer for. Right. So much of these problems, I don't think are the fault of one person, you know. We're just raised in the society we're raised in. Fish in a fishbowl. Right. I think that, you know, the man who struggles to show empathy towards a woman who is just raped or whatever goes on, you know, that's a societal condition he's inherited as well. Right. I think there is intentional evil. Absolutely. I think I had an experience with intentional evil.
We have no doubt.
But I don't think that the person struggling to empathize with an experience and a circumstance they've never been in, I don't necessarily think that's evil on them. I just think they need to exercise their empathy muscles. Right.
Well, even I used to always say, you know, I lost my first husband when I was 25 years old, and it's like a terrible accident. I witnessed it, like all the things you can imagine. And everybody would always, you know, say to me like, oh my God, that must be so hard. I'm so sorry. And I lost my husband. But I remember after that, because I was pretty young and I had, you know, other things that happened in life. But I remember that after that, I used to judge people, you know, and I used to be like, oh yeah, I can't believe she's acting like that after this, or him, or, you know, how people are. And we truly don't know until we walk in someone's shoes.
Exactly.
Like now I don't judge people for their actions. I know I had poor actions even after my husband died. I was lost. I didn't know what to do, like all the things you can imagine. And, you know, people lose children. And that's like the thought that I always have in my head. Thank God, you know, knock on everything, whatever. I haven't had to experience losing a child. I don't ever want to. But I know what it was like to lose a husband, but I can't even wrap my head around what someone goes through when they lose a child.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think, even as a society, people don't think that way. They want to judge. We always want to judge. Oh, and she's drinking and partying too much. Well, what pain is she harboring?
Exactly.
What has she been through or he been through? And it's just so easy to judge the
Yes,
outsider
we see
looking
the
in.
surface.
Yes.
And we
yes.
just assume that's all
Right,
there is.
right. Like they shouldn't be doing that, or they should be doing it this way. Well, you can't say that because not until you walk it.
Exactly.
You just can't.
Exactly. I know for me, it's like living in the religious environment I used to live in, single moms, man, were judged.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
judged.
Right.
And oh my word, if a woman had a child out of wedlock,
Right.
you know, but there were several younger people who left the church that were labeled as rebellious and judged, and maybe they fell into harmful behaviors.
Right.
But wow, look what they went through.
Right.
It's extremely toxic
Right.
environment that they're just trying to get out of and untangle from their mind,
Yes.
and their soul.
Right.
And it's all invisible. No one can see that
Right.
process happening. No one can see them battling those, you know, trying to unwrap those chains from themselves from the inside out. You can't
Right.
see that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it comes out in behaviors that you judge, you know.
Right. Right. And the judgment of people too, even when horrible things happen to, good grief, my throat. See, girl, you got me emotional. See what's happening? I think, you know, even if there's a rape victim or you know, a homicide, whatever it might be, what did they do to put themselves in that situation? Do you think that they did this? Do you think that, what the hell are you people talking about? Like, no, it's not their fault. No, they probably couldn't have done something different. Why do people victim blame?
Exactly.
Makes no sense to me.
Exactly.
It's so ignorant.
Have you seen the displays where like, oh, she was raped. Well, what was she wearing? And then
Yes.
those displays where they show the outfits of what they were wearing, and some of it's
Yeah.
like toddler clothes, librarian dress.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
It's like
I can feel my face, like my blood pressure
It-
going
it's-
up, like
the
thinking,
rage
yes,
is real.
yes,
it's so unjust,
yeah.
and that's why there's rage. So
And that's why we have so many victims
Mm-hmm.
that don't say anything because they're afraid of all that.
yeah, because immediately once they start saying something, they're challenged.
Right, right.
They're quite. I know for me,
Well, I was going to say, were
especially-
you afraid of that?
Oh, horribly
Yeah.
afraid, because my job was to affirm my husband's authority on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So people who knew me as that obedient, submissive, Christian, godly wife who verbalized all these things because that's what she was supposed to do, that's what they knew me as.
Right.
And all of a sudden, all that fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, did she just change her mind?
Right.
It's like, no, I didn't just change my mind. I got my mind back.
Right. People they can't comprehend that it was all a facade.
It's all
know?
a facade that you will be punished for
Right.
letting down.
Right.
So yeah, you play the role.
Yeah.
You smile or else.
Right.
And so yeah, when I stopped doing that, when I wiped that smile off my face,
Mm-hmm.
and I just started living the reality of what was going on. Yeah, it was, and it is shocking to see someone stop playing the role.
I'm sure.
It is. So
Yes.
I get it. I
Yeah.
get it.
Right.
Um,
But it's like you wish people that are so judgmental of those things, you wish that they would just think. Just
and
even
that's when you realize what's best for you does not depend on any of those people's perception of you.
that's a big one.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. When you can actually live your life by, I will do what is best for me, and I am capable of determining what is best for me. Sometimes I might fumble. Sometimes I'll make mistakes.
Of course.
So like I said, I think I mentioned this to you before we started recording, but you know, I'm 31 and I have 5 kids. I feel like I'm 17 inside.
Right.
Coercive control stunts your development.
Absolutely.
It absolutely stunts you. And so I'm learning what it is to live life as myself again at 31.
Right.
The last time I was even trying to do that was when I was 16.
Right.
So yeah, I'm picking back up. So, you know, like, don't judge me when I'm blasting my metal music in my ghetto mom van. That I can't afford
Mind
to
your
fix.
business.
Just don't judge me.
Right. Well, I guess the cool thing, I mean, the way you could look at it in a positive way is you're going to grow with the kids and experience with the kids.
Absolutely.
First time, you know, for you, first times for them, and the things that you do, which I feel is really cool.
It's wonderful. The relationship I have with my kids now is more genuine and sincere and authentic than it ever could be.
Right.
Because I'm no longer having to play the authority figure who must conform these kids to their father's vision. They need to grow up knowing that they are extensions of his worldview. That was my role as a mom.
Right.
That's not my role anymore.
So what does life look like for you guys, you and the kids now?
I mean, exhausting.
Right. Of course. Yes.
There's no getting around that.
Yes.
But and there's a lot of healing to do. Like I said, that
takes time.
That alienation, you know why they do that to kids? Because it's freaking effective.
Absolutely.
That's why they do it. It'll get results, the results they want to see. So
are they at least starting to recognize now that mom's not the villain? Mom's not what dad said.
I think they know I'm not the villain. Here's a huge thing that plays a big role in overcoming these types of situations too. You need to be a safe place for your kids. You do not need to involve them in what is going on.
Right.
Your job is to shelter their childhood, show up, be a care provider, and try to protect whatever childhood and innocence they have left.
Right.
So that they can properly develop. Don't manipulate them. They have their own experiences they're going to have to work through. They have their own relationship with someone that they have to struggle with. They're going to have to figure that out as they grow.
Right.
It is not my job to do that work for them.
Yes.
In fact, that will make them resent me. So a big part of this, and a big part of how you can get through this legal strategy, is be the protector of your children.
Right.
Don't just say you're their mom and then go behind everyone's back and say, you know, your dad did XYZ and your dad did this and he's really out, you know. Shut your mouth.
Right.
Honor their childhood and their innocence and honor their capability, because they are another human. They're another individual who has everything they already need to work their healing journey out.
Right.
Don't try to manage it for them.
Yeah. Show up as their parent, like you said.
Yes.
Be their mom. Be present.
Exactly. Be a safe place.
Right.
And leave your stuff out of it. Don't let them carry your healing burdens.
Your burdens.
Either.
Yes. Yes.
So it just comes back to honoring them as another individual.
Right.
It doesn't matter that they're 2, 5, 8, whatever their ages are.
Let them have
16.
their own journey.
They're another person with their own boundaries and their own journey to walk.
Right.
And they don't need me to tell them where to go.
And every single one of us have our own journey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So does he see them now?
As of right now, no.
Okay.
There's no contact right now.
Since
the court order on September 23rd.
Okay.
I do know that there will be attempts at reunification therapy. That's not started yet.
How do you feel about that?
I feel confident about it. In fact, I feel very confident about it. The only thing that I kind of have trepidation about is I do believe it will result in some behaviors cropping back up that I've not had to deal with in a while.
Right.
They're very challenging, exhausting behaviors. It takes 100% of me to get through it.
Yeah.
When I was working part-time at a coffee shop, it's not a mentally taxing job. I just would clock in and make coffee and clock out.
Right.
I had more capacity to handle those behaviors.
Right.
But now I'm working 8 to 5. I'm at a job that requires a lot of mental attention. It's very mentally
right.
Involved. So when I get off work, I'm not going to be as capable as I was goofing off at a coffee shop.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So I have some trepidation about that. If behaviors crop up again that I have not had to deal with in several months,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I know I'll get through it because I love
because he's not going to stop manipulating.
No.
That's never going to stop.
And he did it so well that he doesn't even have to say anything anymore. He doesn't.
Right.
They know what he wants.
Yeah.
He won't have to say anything negative about me anymore. He will just continue to lavish them.
Yes.
And give those very subtle, nonverbal,
right,
the things that he won't get in trouble for.
Right. Until they're older and they can truly make their own decisions and evaluate the situation and see him for what he really is.
And
you're right. That's not your job for that to tell them.
It's not my job. And I'm sure some of it's going to be painful.
Sure.
I'm sure as they're teenagers, we'll be dealing with all kinds of things.
Yes.
But I know that my job is to love them. My job is to not stunt their own ability to mature and grow by carrying my burden.
Right.
They have enough burden on their own.
Yeah.
So, that's something I think women in these situations need help knowing too. They need that encouragement.
Right.
Because it is so easy to want to because the other party's doing it.
Right.
They're doing it without just free reign. And so it feels very unfair.
Right.
Like, my kids don't know the story. They don't know you did X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
They don't know all this stuff.
What
so
you've
of
done
course
and
they
continue.
love you,
Yeah.
know? But no,
Yeah.
you've got to just show up and be their safe place.
That's tough. That is tough.
It can be exhausting. It can, but they're worth it. And you also know they didn't ask for any of
Right.
this.
But I think in the long run, they'll respect you more when they're old enough to really let it click of the things you did for them and didn't participate.
That's what
in the
I
same
hope
things.
to see.
Yes.
And I'm sure maybe that click will happen for all of them at different times and different ages and different,
depending on where they are in their journey of life. Yeah.
And who knows what might happen, know? So yeah, I'm not too worried about the reunification therapy.
Right.
The only concern is, do I have the capacity to once again manage behaviors that might crop up again?
Right.
But that's just what I need to do.
Do the kids want to see him?
Yes.
Okay.
They don't talk about him too much.
Right.
But they still they know that he's made life at his home a candy land for them. And they know that. Bought a pool, like a above ground pool with all the pool floats and all the stuff.
Yes.
So, but I also know my kids do love me. And I know that even when there's behavior issues and challenges and stress and all kinds of things, the chaos and I still know they love me. So,
well, you're their constant too. You show up, you're there.
And I've seen them. I don't ever try to pressure them to consider me, just as in a I am another person. I know you're angry,
right?
But you can't treat anyone this way. It really doesn't matter. I'm your mom. It's just I'm another person, and you shouldn't treat any other person this way.
Yes.
They need to know those things
for sure.
They need to know that they can manage their emotions in a way that did not harm others. Children tend to just, let it all out. And part of the growing up process is learning how to be responsible for your inner world in a way that doesn't harm others. So yeah, they're figuring that out, and I want to help them figure that part out. But I know that they have everything they need to live successful lives. They do, because they're humans. They really, it's a matter of going back and saying, I know what I need. I'm capable of knowing what I need.
Right.
Even when I make mistakes, I'm capable of learning from them. And so I believe they have that, because I think everybody does.
Right.
I truly believe that.
Yes.
I think everybody does.
You're such an
So.
inspiration. Seriously,
you.
you've been through hell.
It's been hard.
Yeah. Yeah, but just the fact that you're able to put this out there for other people. There's so many other people
There's so
in the
many
same
other
situation that you were in. So
Sure.
like if you were to like, if they were listening, like what would be something you would tell them? Like if they're in the thick of it, they're right where you were and feeling helpless and hopeless and beat down and everything you can think of. Like what advice do you think that you could give them to know they don't have to be there?
I would tell them two things. The first, really love yourself. Really take the time to mend your wounds. It's worth it. And however you do that is valid. And take the time to learn how to do that. You know, we don't necessarily know what feeds our souls. Sometimes we have to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
And you are worth taking the time to figure that out. Freaking take care of yourself. And then the second thing I would tell them, of course, is just they're not alone, because there are so many. Like, I never want to see anyone go through what I went through. But there are so many who are, or who will, or are trying to recover. I mean, the statistics alone it's awful. Our society is in crisis. It really is. We're in a, what is it? I have some of the statistics written down, but
Go ahead.
so many women, it's
because I don't think we think of it in this manner, you know, that they're going through things like this, but statistics are real.
They are.
And that's just the ones that we know about.
All of the ones that aren't reported.
Yes.
310 out of 1,000 sex abuse cases are reported. Wow. 310 out of 1,000 are actually reported.
Wow.
So yeah, if there's one thing, it's like we need to help these women get their voices back,
yes,
so that the reporting can happen. Mm-hmm. That's the first step.
What kind of like based on what you've seen and you know, who can they reach out to? Like what are some of the things that they can do to help their situation, like you did? Like you were able to, you had friends and the ministry helped. Like what can they do?
The first thing they can do is get in alignment with themselves, because when you do that, other things come into an alignment. So there are obviously domestic abuse ministries. I know there's one in Franklin, Bridges Center for Domestic Abuse. You can contact. They're going to be people who help you with supplies, you know, diapers, just basic necessities.
Okay.
I think they have some emotional support groups of women that, you know, the women and their children can meet. They can help you get in contact with attorneys with discounted rates for situations like this. There's hotlines. There's, you know, I wish there were more, because really the one thing that the hardest thing to find support in is affording the legal process.
Yes.
That's the hardest thing. Mm-hmm. I wish there was more support for that. And I want to make that happen. And I have some ideas on how to make that happen, because it's pretty amazing that so few abusers actually face jail time. Mm-hmm. And the reason is because the victims are the ones burdened with the cost of justice, and they cannot afford it. That's why abusers don't go to jail. Right. And so if there's a way to solve that problem, I would love to see a lot of women too, like me, for example. I'm recovering from all this stuff. So if I see someone else with a campaign or a fundraiser, there's not too much I can do financially to really help them fuel their legal fight. Right. And, you know, court costs, expert witnesses, attorney fees. The costs are insane.
Right.
It's just insane.
Yes,
and
they
depending on the, how long it takes, and depending on their particular abuser, if there's anything like mine, he's going to drag you back to court again and again and again and again. And you just have to have representation. Yeah. And sometimes maybe you need to adjust and find an attorney that fits your needs more. And then you have, I retained this one. I haven't used up all my hours with this one, but it's not working, so I got to go retain another one,
Yeah.
So the costs are just, I was very blessed with that. I've because of just the people I met along the way, that was able to happen, and I'm so thankful.
Right.
But not everyone is going to
be
have
in that
the
position.
same, and so if there's a way to help women fund the legal process, we're going to see a whole lot more justice served.
Right.
And men are going to be a little more intimidated.
Right.
To commit the act in the first place.
Because consequences start happening for these abusers.
Yes.
Or and they know right now.
The more we can help women fund the fight, and they can show up to every court date they need to do with the finances they need to get through while he's depleting his financial resources. Financially exhaust them. If they're going to drag your ass back to court, keep showing up and defend your cause. But you can't do that without financial resources.
I know.
So we really have to finance the fight against abuse. If there's one practical thing to do, that's it.
Okay.
So
I think that's completely fair to say.
Yeah, and that's
it's
a huge
true.
problem.
It's so true.
It's a huge problem. I personally would love to utilize social media to make that happen, because even if I'm not able to, give financially to your cause,
right? If
I can support a social media campaign that is going to pay you for views, that takes no effort from me.
Right.
I can hit
and so many other people can do the same.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because that is one of the beauties of social media.
Yes.
It's a pain in the ass a lot of times.
Sure.
But there is good in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What about, there are so many women that have severe domestic violence physically, and they're scared. And the safe houses, are those available?
I wish I had a better answer for this. I know that the ministry that helped me, their safe houses are maxed.
Okay.
I think Bridges might offer emergency short term, but that's just short term, and so often you need more.
Right.
A lot of times people aren't in a place to go to family.
Yes.
Because sometimes the family's not a safe place.
Yes.
A lot of people take it for granted that people have safe relatives to just go.
Right.
Well, I had 5 kids to tag along with me. If there's a family in a house, maybe they're supportive of me. They're not going to have the space for me and 5. And a lot of people, especially women leaving religious abusive situations, they're going to have a lot of kids.
Yeah.
It's part of the problem.
Right.
Like that's, so
maybe even money and funding for short-term rentals or whatever.
Funding really is. If you can use social media to fund your legal campaign, and if you're ever in a situation where you need to book an Airbnb, that's it.
Right.
So really, people have got to fund the fight.
Right.
They do.
I don't think people know that it's not funded, that there's not, I don't think people are aware. I think educating people on that
people
is
say,
big
why
too.
didn't you speak up?
Right. How? What am I going to do? Right?
Yeah, what am I going to do? I'm going to speak up. We're going to go to court, and I'm not going to afford the representation I need.
Right.
Or why isn't he in jail? Why didn't you pursue that?
Right.
Why didn't you take him to court?
The whole judgment. Yeah, right?
Dude,
yeah.
dollar signs.
Right. Right.
That's the big blaring issue.
Yes.
So, yeah. But if there's a way to turn the tide and to actually put some fear into these men, if you're going to do that, be prepared to pay for it.
Right. Sadly, too, we've been coming across quite a few, there's women that are abusers, just like the men.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's mind-blowing.
That's so real.
Yeah.
I do want to say that is very real. I kind of emphasize, the fight for women or something like that.
Well,
just
that's,
because
that's what
statistically,
what you went through and everything. Yeah.
Yes, because statistically it is overwhelming. The amount of like men who actually commit sexual assault is overwhelming. Like, that's not to dismiss in any way that there are men who have suffered horribly.
Yes.
And they need the fight too. They need funding too.
And I think for them, being a man and things like that happen to you, it's just thought of different. Like they don't want to say anything because I'm a man, but someone didn't sexually abuse me.
Right.
Like
this society
just the
really
stigma
does
of everything.
It really does silence people. It silences women, but then there's the whole like, well, I'm a man.
Right.
Right. A man. It's
right.
Like,
right.
So you just, there's like this pressure not to admit.
So your trauma doesn't matter? It does.
It actually, it absolutely does.
Right.
So, and I a lot of men are harmed as children and they don't feel safe to talk about it. And it just keeps internalizing until it spills out.
And like you've said a couple times too, that's just helping all the abusers. If people don't speak up and they don't worry about consequences.
Yeah.
Because most people don't say anything.
Yeah. Because it costs a lot to say something.
Yeah.
It does.
It does. I know your story is going to be amazing for so many people though. Because there's so many that they're just sitting there and being miserable and don't think there's a way out.
And they're alone.
Yeah.
I feel so blessed to have the friends I have. I feel so blessed to have had the representation that I had, to the safe house, just all of that's part of my story, and all of that I take no credit for. I don't know why it happened that way. I don't know why I was able to live rent-free for 2 years
right.
with 5 kids.
Right.
That's insane. That's insane that happened. So, but if I can just, all of that played a role in me surviving. And if I'm still alive and walking and breathing after that,
right,
I want to make sure others are too. Because like you said, there are so many.
Right.
So I want to try to figure out how to fund the fight, because
let's work on that. Even if we're getting attorneys to, discount rates, like you said, or just all the things. There's so many people that own businesses that need to donate every year, just to get rid of some of their money because for taxes or whatever it might be. And it's just such an important cause.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to get it out there. I have a feeling. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'm still trying to establish a new life, and it's very exhausting working 40 hours a week and raising 5 kids. It is.
Got to get out there and tell your story more. Write a book, girl. You can do it all. For sure. I don't know. I'm grateful that you came on. This was good.
Thank you. It's very special. For me, it's part of healing. It's just, I've never done anything like this before. Nervous on how it's going to go.
Yeah.
But hey, I got to give it a shot.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and the fact that it's such an inspiration, that's a big deal. Well, we'll have to have you back in even 6 months or next year, how far you've come. Because I know you're going to. You're going to.
Thank you so much. This was great. I love the podcast and what you're doing.
Yeah.
Just raising more awareness or providing a safe place for people to come on and share their stories.
Yeah.
That's going to be messy and hard work, because sharing your story can be messy and hard.
It is. Even for me, like I didn't fully do this right. I've told quite a few people for almost 2 years because of all my own stuff that I just wasn't ready. And I still haven't told my whole story or anything yet. That's why I'm so grateful for people like you that come on and they're here to help. You're here to tell your story. You're here for it to touch someone else that's going through the same thing. So we're all doing this together. Like this isn't just me.
And even if our traumas don't match, I mean, the death of someone you love, like your loved one, that's something I can't relate to.
Right.
I did lose my mom, but that's a different relationship.
Right.
It's, there's so many kinds of traumas that I don't have to have experienced what you did.
Right.
You don't have to experience what I did, but there's empathy.
But we
There's
have empathy. Yeah.
And sometimes maybe empathy just looks like holding a space for silence and tears.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it looks like cracking a dark joke.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Sometimes it's just
I'm all
a
for
little
that.
levity to
Yeah.
a very dark and depressing situation.
Right.
Sometimes it's just not judging someone when they are vulnerable. That's huge.
Right.
So yeah, this podcast, I can see it's facilitating things like that.
Yeah.
Which have a huge, huge impact.
Right.
So
We're all doing it together. Thank you for coming on today.
this was
I
a pleasure.
appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
I'm turning inside